user group meeting. And what I want to talk about in the next hour is this idea of how you deliver SharePoint success. And it's the idea of how you achieve organizational buy-in. So one of the great things about this platform, while it's been here in the last 12, 13 years, and it's been a while. I've been working with this since 2000, 2001 timeframe, even before it was called SharePoint. It's a double-edged sword. Most large organizations have it, and I'm sure folks that are attending this meeting, you guys have it. But the sad part about this wonderful platform is 80% of usage out there is nothing more than a big file share. And a lot of people talk about, SharePoint is great. We need more adoption. We need more buy-in. So that's what we're going to cover in this hour. And just to make sure we're all clear, my name is Dux, and I'm not that guy. Do you guys hear me? See me? Okay. So yeah, I think my style is better, so we'll find out, right? Uh, but again, my name is Dux. I'm a managing partner of Innovative E. Like I said, I've been working with this technology for a while now, and it's a very powerful platform. It's just so disappointing to me that a lot of large organizations, or even small, are not maximizing it to its full capacity. My company is Innovative E. We're based out of Atlanta and also Washington, D.C., where I'm out of. And we focus really on helping organizations to deliver the business value of SharePoint. Most of our customers, they already have SharePoint and they're asking, now what? So we help them with that. And the other aspect of where we do a lot of business in is in the area of project management, as Roger mentioned. We help organizations take advantage of SharePoint as a project management platform and also related technologies around that. So things like Microsoft Project, Project Server, and I also wrote the book SharePoint for Project Management. And for being here tonight, everybody in the room, I'll give everyone a copy of SharePoint for Project Management. So I'll work with Roger. I'll give you a code where you can download a free ebook copy from Microsoft Press website. Okay? All right, so let's get the conversation started. So we're going to talk about this idea of success. But before we jump into this idea of how you deliver SharePoint success, let's step back and think about what's going on in our world today. In fact, there's this revolution that's brewing. We like it or not, it's here. Now the question is, are we ready? Or are we equipped for these things? So the enterprise revolution, the enterprise transformation is here. And if you don't see the signs, here are the 4 signs of this transformation that's going on. Number 1, we're in the age of BYOD, bring your own device, consumerization of IT, right? I mean, a lot of you relate to this. You go to your companies today, people bring in their own phones, their own mobile device. Executive loves their iPad. And even workstations, I see a lot of companies now where people bring in their own laptops, and that will happen a lot. Back in the days, it's always company-issued phones, company-issued laptops, but today, it's different. And that's just hardware alone. What about software? How many of you in your companies where the business just can't wait for IT, they go out and use Dropbox. They go out and use Basecamp because IT just can't help them soon enough. How do you handle this? How do you handle the speed of business? We're in the day and age where things are just happening so fast, decisions has to be made. I mean, for example, who would have imagined somebody putting out a video on YouTube in July of 2012 and 5 months later make $8 million because it's the most watched video out there, right? Just imagine from a business perspective, what kind of decisions had to be made, what kind of agreements has to happen quickly. So from an IT perspective, are we equipped to help our organizations or support our organizations to really maximize the speed of business that's going on? The other telltale sign that the enterprise transformation revolution is here is the idea of doing more with less. This is the reality today. We don't have endless budgets. We're always, especially with IT, where in most cases we're not a profit center, where we're getting less resources, but the business is asking for more stuff. So how do we do this? How do we support our organization? What about social engagement? Social is the big buzzword these days, but the question is, how do we support our business and provide a platform so that they can take advantage of all the goodness of social. Now, it's not a question of when this is happening. It's already happening. The question is, again, how do we support our organization to be successful in this day and age where everything's so fast, where we have to do more with less? BYOD is here. And in a lot of organizations, they have SharePoint. They realize and they know that SharePoint can help them. So the quick answer is, let's throw SharePoint, let's throw Yammer, let's throw all these Microsoft tools. It should work. Or does it? I mean, look at this picture. I have kids of my own, so I can clearly relate to this picture. My daughter, she's almost 3 now, and one big disappointment I have is anytime I buy her a new toy, she just opens the box. She doesn't read the manual. And 5 minutes later, if she can't figure it out, she gets frustrated. Why won't this one fit? Does that sound familiar? I mean, think about your users. Think about when you throw SharePoint out there. Hey, marketing, here's SharePoint. Go have fun. Bless your heart. And what? It's nothing but a big file dump. Why won't this fit? I thought SharePoint is the answer for everything. Don't you find that funny? Like in companies today, we need SharePoint can do that. What about SharePoint can do that? You haven't really asked the question yet. Then, let's use SharePoint. What's your mom's name? SharePoint. Right? You see, the challenge is a lot of typical SharePoint implementations today really revolves around these characteristics. Right? So first and foremost, what we see a lot in organizations today, and I'm sure you're among you there, and one of you there is in this situation, where there's this unplanned growth. IT may be deciding, hey, the CIO says, let's do SharePoint, try it out. IT, okay, we're going to download the virtual machine from Microsoft. Maybe we'll fire up a little VM. Hey, you're not using your machine, right? Ducks? Okay, let's fire a little VM. Let's do a pilot here in IT. Let's play with it. SharePoint 2013. Wow, this is cool. Let me email my buddy in marketing. Hey, marketing. Hey, Mark, check this out. Isn't this cool, SharePoint 2013? Mark was like, oh, wow, this is really cool. Let me hit up my guy in sales. Lo and behold, this pilot 2 weeks later is your production intranet. A month later, you got 60,000 freaking sites. 6 weeks later, permissions are up the wazoo. Everything's so slow. People can't find anything. SharePoint sucks. Right? Well, again, it's very technology-centric. That's why we're not getting the value. We're not being successful at it. And this is another big issue I see. There's a lot of posers out there. I don't want to sugarcoat it. I mean, I've been to a lot of organizations where they have a lot of customized SharePoint sites, custom solutions, and yet they don't really need that. So here's a tip for you. The next time, if you work with a so-called SharePoint expert and you try and talk to them initially about what you need for whatever challenge you have, whatever solution you need, and if the first words out of their mouth is, oh, we could build that in Visual Studio and deploy it as a solution. If that's the first thing they say, poser alert. Because with SharePoint, the power of the platform is it's so rich in functionality out of the box is the first thing that you have to consider until you can't do it. And then second is if you can't do it out of the box, look at third-party add-ons out there. Customization is the last option. Okay? I'm not saying you don't do it, but that's the last option until you've considered everything else. Then, that's why we end up with SharePoint as nothing but a glorified file share, right? A lot of organizations pour in their investment and they're paying too much money if it's just a big file share. So what do we do? All right? This is what we don't want to happen. If people in your organizations think that SharePoint suck, you got to look at them in the eye and say, SharePoint doesn't suck, you suck. It's a tool, right? Maybe you're a tool. No, just kidding. But it's so funny where there's this negative impression, or people hate SharePoint. It's not whatever. But the problem is, again, it's very technology focused as how it was delivered. So how do we shift our thinking? So whenever you want to get the value or you want to deliver SharePoint success, you have to shift your thinking. I mean, I love this quote. Do you guys see this quote on the screen? So, okay, I'd like for you to read with me. All right, I'm going to count to three. One, two, three. Technology provides no benefits of its own. It is the application of the technology to business opportunities that produces ROI. While this may sound so academic and fundamental, but we lose sight of this, right? We get, especially technologists, and I'm guilty of this myself, where we get so caught up. Ooh, 2013 is here. We can use the news feed, the wiki. We can use all the Yammer stuff. But then, okay, what's a business value? I mean, I remember 6 months ago, I had a customer. I was advising them because they're going to do an upgrade to 2013 to 80,000 people in this global organization. So they were asking me, so Dux, what do you think? Here's what we're going to do. You know, we're going to have all these templates. We're going to enable news feeds. We're going to put wikis. I go, wait. Why? I ask why. And just like you guys, dead silence in the room for about 3 minutes. That made me very, very uncomfortable because being an immigrant, I'm kind of insecure that my English is not good enough. So I asked another question. I said, ¿Por qué? and they laughed. The IT director says, what do you mean? I go, why do you think you need a news feed? Why do you think you need a wiki? Isn't that the cool thing? Isn't that enterprise social thing? Isn't that Web 2.0 the buzzword these days? I go, okay, but what does a wiki mean to Miss Sally in accounting who's processing invoice at the end of the month? What does newsfeed? What's the value of a newsfeed to the operations manager who's managing all the different retail stores out there? What value would that provide? Tell me, what's that business opportunity that you can, or business need that you can solve? If you cannot answer that question up front, don't even bother doing any of that. Because to me, a wiki, that's something that you use in the club, right? Wiki, wiki, wiki. But if you don't if you don't keep this in mind, this quote in mind before anything you do, then getting that idea of success is a pipe dream. So okay, so how do you do this? So we talked about the trends that's going on today, right? We talked about what's going on in the business world today, in the enterprise. We also talked about what are the wrong things people are doing when they deploy SharePoint. So let's look at how do we do it right, or at least in my experience, what's worked for me, for my organization, and for the clients I've helped. So these are the 5 steps to achieve organizational buy-in that can help transform organizations. And these are the key 5 steps that I use and I help my customers with. And I'll show you some tips. I'll show you some templates and examples in a second. But so these are the 5 steps that you have to go through. And this applies no matter how big or how small your SharePoint implementation is. So first things first. So step 1, to deliver success and gain organizational buy-in, you have to gain executive engagement. Now, what do I mean by this? First and foremost, you got to get your decision makers, the people writing the check, the people who tell you put SharePoint in place, you got to make sure that they're on the same page as you. You got to make sure that they clearly understand the value of SharePoint to your organization. Now, when I say value, I'm not talking about the Microsoft pitch, because a lot of these high-level folks, they get they get the sales pitch from Microsoft, and all they learn about SharePoint is, hey, look at these slides, look at these features, look at these 6 pillars. I'm going to hypnotize you now, all right? But the idea is we have to talk about what it means to the organization. So here's an example. About 3 years ago, I got a call from a CIO, and he said, hey, Dux, I saw you in one of the breakfast briefings here in New York, and you talked about the business value SharePoint, so help me out here. So here's my situation. I'm a CIO of a law firm. We have 500 people across US and Europe, and my budget this fiscal year has been cut 30%. And the business still expects the same level of services from IT. In fact, they might be asking for more stuff. Tell me how SharePoint can help. That's the kind of conversation you want to get into with the decision makers. Well, that's something we're not comfortable with. I realize a lot of IT folks aren't comfortable to get into that kind of conversation, but that's the kind of conversation you want to get into to make the executives get the power of SharePoint. So what did I do? So I said, oh, okay, let's do this. SharePoint can clearly help you, but I want to show you right away how SharePoint can, with that budget that's now limited, SharePoint can still help you and deliver the value to your organization. I said, all right, so what we're going to do, we're going to do a quick pilot. We're going to look at a small slice in your business, so it's low risk. And I'm going to prove to you that SharePoint can be very, very powerful and valuable. So I asked them, I said, so being a law firm, I bet everybody, especially lawyers in your company, they do a lot of meetings, right? He goes, yeah, yeah. So I go, I suspect the way they do meetings is they fire up their Outlook, they send a meeting invite, they put all the attachments there for the meeting, and then they send it to everybody that's a part of the meeting. He goes, yes. And I go, after the meeting, I suspect too that there's going to be action items, so you find emails flying back and forth with attachments. It's just a lot of this stuff going on. He goes, yep, exactly. So I'm going to show you, we're going to streamline that process and show you not only you're going to save money, but SharePoint's going to help you, but people will be happier as well. So the first thing I want you to do, Mr. CIO, is do a audit of how big people's email inboxes are. He goes, okay. He came back, he said on the average, people's email inboxes were about 2 to 3 gigs. And I go, how much does that cost? He goes, well, hardware, storage is cheap. I go, no. What's the total cost of maintaining people's email inboxes? Not only maintaining it, backing it up, subscribing to Sarbanes-Oxley. You all familiar with Sarbanes-Oxley? How long should you keep financially related data or legal compliant data? 7 years, right? So looking at that whole picture, how much does it cost? So he came up with some number because, not only did he talk about the email storage, but the backup, but the resource taking care of that stuff. So human resource as well. And I also asked, what's the cost of your executives or your lawyers getting upset because they can't find stuff in their email? There's a cost to that too, right? He goes, yep. So we came up with some number, and he says, okay, so I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to kind of change a little bit on how people facilitate their meetings. You see, you already have Windows SharePoint services. This is before SharePoint 2010. And you don't even have to buy anything. It comes with your Windows server. And there's a feature there called Meeting Workspaces. And it's integrated in Outlook. So what we're going to do is we're going to teach people that when they fire up a meeting invite, instead of putting attachments and agenda in that meeting invite, we're going to teach people, click on this button so it'll create a meeting workspace, essentially a SharePoint site, which will centralize all the meeting artifacts. And we're going to train them. And the idea is not only will the information be centralized in a relatively secure repository, but all the attachment won't be going back and forth. So you have document management, all that good stuff. So this was a 2-month exercise. So we help IT put the infrastructure together. We train people, and we said, the way it was pitched is we didn't say you're going to use SharePoint. IT has a solution for you so you can better manage your meetings. It's called Meeting Central. That's what we called it. We trained people for an hour, and it was a low barrier to entry because the way people interacted with it initially is through Outlook. We didn't tell people, go to the browser, create a meeting workspace. No, within Outlook, as you create the invite, click the button that says Create Meeting Workspace. Guess what? So we did that exercise on the end of the 4th month. We went back and measured how it all worked. Number 1, everybody loved it because they felt like they only learned, a couple of things. Number 1, because now everything is centralized, they can find things easily. They don't have to deal with looking through their email. But second is they liked it because in their minds it's not a new tool. In their minds it's just an extension of Outlook. And then number 3, part of this whole exercise, people's email inboxes were cut down to 500 meg, which is okay because they did an audit. There's a lot of junk stuff in people's email inboxes anyway, like duplicates, forwarded stuff, and all that. And so from that alone, we were able to extract what the ROI, right, return on investment, or the savings was. But the cool part of this story is he came back and said, Dux, there's one thing we didn't even think of, but we actually saved money. I go, what's that? He goes, you see, originally we had 3 T1 lines coming into corporate. Are you guys familiar with T1 lines? It's like these internet pipes. Yep. Okay. And the reason why we had that is, people love to send attachments to many people. So imagine if we send 10 files to 10 people, that's 100 files like right there. And these legal briefs are huge. But now, since people are doing these meetings and the artifacts are centralized in a SharePoint site, which is a meeting workspace, all people are sending our links. And we don't need that much bandwidth. So we dropped the other T1. Ka-ching, ka-ching, ka-ching. Now notice I spent time describing this for a couple reasons. A lot of SharePoint implementations out there, number one, we always look at the big thing. Oh, we want to roll out SharePoint with an intranet, hook it up with a CRM, extranet, run DMC, everything. And the executives would buy that, right? Oh, yeah, we're going to do this big thing. And then what? You spend all that money and cricket, nobody's using it. What I subscribe to is, number one, you got to get the executives, the decision makers, in the mindset that this can help solve business problems. And it's not just big business problems. As a low-risk approach, look at the day-to-day pain points that you can solve right away. Because you want quick wins, low-hanging fruit, and low risk. And then the second point is, in this exercise that we did from a user perspective, which we'll talk more about in a second, wow, it's just another feature of Outlook. Surely it's limited, but through time, as they saw the value, they wanted to learn more and they wanted to do more, right? So it's our responsibility to raise awareness, and the way we do that is make it very, very specific to our organization. It's about business value, so financial gain. So that's the example I just said. So it could be saving money or making money. Expedite innovation, and even facilitate collaboration. There's a lot of great stories out there about how SharePoint provides business value. And you got to get through this hump with the decision makers before you start doing anything. Next, the second step, once you've engaged the executives, the second step is you have to educate and engage the business. And these would be the people in the trenches, your HR, your project managers, your finance people, because one thing you want to do, you want to get across, is SharePoint is an essential business tool. Now, to prove my point, what do you think these numbers mean? Anybody? Just shout it out. What do you think these series of numbers mean? Whatever comes to mind first. Just shout out an example. Phone number, maybe, right? What else? Social security number, maybe. My bank account number, maybe. How much money I have? Not really. If it was true, I won't be doing this. Document ID, yeah. Okay. I mean, it all could be right or all could be wrong. What does that mean? Document management, intranet, collaboration, reporting, extranet, BI. Might be right, might be wrong. And that is the problem, friends, when we engage with the business. We as IT, we casually throw this word around. Hey, we got SharePoint. We're going to do SharePoint for you. We take a very, very fast food approach where IT puts the infrastructure, rolls it out, and then they go to the business. Okay, marketing, how would you like your SharePoint? Team sites, surveys, wikis, you want to supersize it? Throw a little BCS. Next. Right? That's what we do. And guess what? It doesn't work. It ends up as a big file dump. Now, how should we approach this? We have to identify solutions. We don't just throw around features and capabilities. I mean, just like this nice car, right? This is a nice car, and then, this is SharePoint. Expensive. We throw it around and say, hey, here's your new Ferrari. Wow, people will look at it for 10 minutes, they'll salivate, but then after that they'll realize, wait a second, I just learned how to ride a bike yesterday, email and Excel. I don't have time for this, I'm just going to leave this in the garage, I'm going to ride my bike to work even if it's slow because I know it works, right? And I think that's the problem. We're so caught up on features and technology, we forget solving problems. So the key here to work with the business is we got to get everybody on the same page right away. And the same page is what the solution is or what their problems are. What if I told you these numbers are arranged in an alphabetical order? 8, 5, 4, 9, 1, 7, 6, 3, 2, 0. Now we're all looking at the same way. We're all on the same page, right? So the idea when you engage with the business, you have to work with them and collaboratively engineer solutions. And these solutions should definitely address pain points. And initially, it should identify quick wins. And as best you can, you have to have familiar tools to get them started with. Okay, give me an idea. Give me an example, Dux. Okay, so I'm gonna flip to my Windows, my demo environment here. I'm gonna show you an example. Okay, so do you guys see my my browser and my intranet here? Okay. So here's an example. So this is my intranet. We're on 2013. And one of the things we use SharePoint for is to manage projects. So, this is our intranet. And on this next tab, here's a SharePoint site, a SharePoint 2013 site for a project we're working on. It's called Executive Presentation Project. Okay. And in the spirit of having a one-stop shop, everything about the project is here. Our schedule, our documents, all the good stuff, everything. So let me share a little story of one of the customers we worked with a while back. So this customer had SharePoint. They've had it for 3 years. Again, it's a big file share. So we came in, we helped them. So one of the first things we helped them with is how to take advantage and use SharePoint for project management. So we helped shape the solution. We provided some training. And we found out that any given point in time, they have 100 projects in their company. Before, what they would do, they would use email, Excel, and network share to manage these projects. And I'm sure a lot of you relate to that. So now the idea is we're going to use SharePoint to manage and centralize all the project artifacts and information. Now, one of the things we found out in this company is at the end of the month, every project manager would send an expense report to Miss Sally in accounting. Imagine Miss Sally in accounting getting 100 Excel files in her email inbox every month, and her job is to take these Excel files, summarize it, put together a single monthly report on how much they're spending for projects. Does that sound familiar? So I talked to Miss Sally. I said, Miss Sally, how much time do you spend doing this? She goes, oh, I spend about 6-7 hours every month to put this report together. And I've been doing it for the last 8 years. And sometimes I even have to do overtime because, some of these project expenses come in late and it's the end of the month. I spend overtime to put the report together. I said, Miss Sally, what if I help you cut that time in half? Or maybe instead of 7 hours, spend 4 hours. Would you be interested in that? She goes, of course. But, I go, but what? As long as I can do it in Excel, that's the only tool I like to use. I don't want to learn anything new. Does that sound familiar? You have your Miss Sally's, right? And she goes, I don't want to learn anything new because I'm retiring in 2 years. All I want to use is Excel. I go, oh, that's cool, Miss Sally. That's okay. Because actually, I'm going to show you a feature in Excel. How about that? She goes, really? I go, yeah. And I said, here's what we're going to do. We're going to tell project managers, stop emailing you. We're going to tell project managers just to put their expenses in their project site. Okay? Since everything else about the project is there, put the expenses there as well. And as soon as they enter the expenses in their project site, automatically it's going to show up in an Excel file sitting on your desktop. So you don't have to deal with email. We're going to cut that whole email stuff out. Would you be interested? She goes, of course, show me. I go, okay, so here's what we're going to do, Miss Sally. So I'm going to fire up Excel, and I'm going to show you a quick example. So let's say this is a very simple example. So let's say we bought some tables for $500. We bought some chairs for $300. I'm going to pre-populate the spreadsheet here, and I will format this and make it the right format. Okay, so and then we're gonna label this sheet, the spreadsheet for the let's say the GNVSPUG presentation project, whatever. Okay. All right. So I pre-populated this data, and what I'm going to do next, gang, is I'm going to take this information and I will connect it to that project site. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to convert this Excel data, convert it to what's called an Excel table. Notice as soon as I do this, check this out, publish and allow sync. Wow. So all I have to do, and this is built into Excel. So I'm going to go to this dialog box and just put in the URL of this project site, okay, instead of typing it. Let's see, Control C, Control V, and I'm going to give it a name. Let's call this a GNVSPUG presentation expenses, whatever. And I'm just going to hit publish. So gang, as soon as I hit publish, what's going on here? Excel will contact that SharePoint site, authenticate me, log me in, create a custom list, populate the custom list with these fields and data. And as soon as that's done, keep the connection, and voila. If we look at this, so let's go to view it. So now, the same information in the Excel file is in the project site as well. Okay? Now, how would this work? So let me copy this. So let's say, okay, project managers would start entering the data. Okay, yes, I'm using a Mac. Get over it. All right, so let's say, I mean, we're in the age of BYOD, right? I'm one of the culprits here. So now project managers, and that's a part of 2013 as well, they love their iPads or Mac. They go to the project site. They enter in their project expenses. So let's say we bought a car for the project. And so let's say we bought computers for the project. All right. If you guys don't realize what I'm doing here, I'm entering data in the datasheet view in Firefox on my Mac. Datasheet view. I mean, that's one of the disappointments I had in 2010. I can only do that in IE. Now, I mean, check this out. It's pretty cool, which is great, right? Because you want something that's going to be well adopted. So as soon as the project manager enters the data, let's go back to Miss Sally here. What happens? So if you have alerting turned on or maybe some workflow enabled, Miss Sally would be alerted, hey, new expenses came in. Guess what? Miss Sally, in the Excel file on her desktop, she can synchronize the information, and voila, the same information the project manager entered in the project site is now visible and available in Excel sitting on her desktop. Right? You talk about adoption. That's the power of this platform, right? We don't have to force, it's not a one-size-fits-all, and I think that's a problem in a lot of implementations out there. We force people, oh, go to SharePoint, go to SharePoint. Forget that. Think about solutions. We just solve a pain point for Miss Sally. So Miss Sally's looking at this, she's looking at the receipt, she goes, well, you guys didn't buy a car, you bought carpet. And it's not 50,000, it's 5,000. So Miss Sally can update the data in Excel and then synchronize it back to that project site. So as soon as she hits synchronize, the same piece of information is now updated on the project site. All right? Now, some of you may be thinking, wow, that's cool, Dux, but you know, this is all 2013. We don't have 2013. What I just showed you, friends, is not even new. This feature has been there since Excel 2003 and SharePoint 2003. It's a 10-year-old technology. Now, just raise your hands. Who doesn't know about this synchronization? Raise your hands. It's okay. I won't tell. Yeah? All right. Yeah, I put this back because I want to see. Yeah. But my point is, gang, I mean, yeah, to some of us, that's very simplistic, Dux. But guess what? While it's simplistic, boy, every time I show this to the business, I show it to a business user, they love this. And then after 2 months, Miss Sally calls me back. She goes, Dux, thank you for showing me that. You know what I did? I created 100 spreadsheets. I connected to the 100 or 99 other spreadsheets, which I connected to 99 other project sites. I created a summary sheet which pulled all the data from my Excel file just with a pivot table and pivot chart. And I don't have to deal with email. And guess what? I saved, after he showed me that, I put my solution together. The first month after I start using it, I saved 2 hours, and I suspect I'm going to save more time. I didn't even have to do overtime. You talk about business value. Miss Sally, she saved 2 hours. The company doesn't have to pay for her overtime. Those are the kinds of things you have to look for. And I asked Miss Sally, so what do you do now with the 2 hours you saved? She goes, I learned how to use Facebook. But that's another problem, right? But my point here, friends, is when you talk to the business, again, as much as you can, don't talk about SharePoint. SharePoint doesn't matter. Business matters. You're not going to hide the fact that SharePoint is an essential tool, but talk about their pain, their needs, and utilize familiar tools. At the end of the day, here's what you want to get to with a business. You see, today, people go to work. The two killer applications they have, or three, is email, Excel, and Outlook. Or email, Excel, and Word, I should say. And it's no different in other organizations. And people view those three tools as a very essential business tool. Unfortunately, the business users today don't think of SharePoint that way. They think of SharePoint, in most cases, as a file share. Where you want to get to is people thinking about SharePoint as an essential business tool. And when people talk about SharePoint today, it's either a file share or they'll say, I don't like how it looks. Make it pretty. Make it look like Ferrari.com, right? Do you have users coming to you and asking you, hey, I don't like how Excel looks. Can you change how Excel looks? Can you change how Outlook looks? Can you change how Word looks? Users don't think about it that way. They think that Excel, Outlook, and Word, these are essential business tools. It will get my work done. That's a kind of shift that you got to get to with your business users. And the way to do that is to hit their pain points, quick wins, and start with familiar tools. Now, don't call it SharePoint, right? We callously throw the word around SharePoint. If it's your intranet, call it your intranet. If it's a project management dashboard or project management system, call it that. Because SharePoint is this big blob that it could do everything and nothing and something. So you're not going to hide the fact of SharePoint, but call it what it is, right? The third step to achieve organizational buy-in, to deliver SharePoint success, is you have to look at how ready your organization is. You got to assess enterprise readiness. And you have to prioritize. You cannot do it all. So for example, if you help the business and kind of show them the power and the possibility of SharePoint to help their day-to-day business needs, they'll get all excited. They would want everything for nothing, and you know that. So how do you prioritize? How do you figure out who you should help first, who you should help next, what solutions you should deploy? So I'm going to show you an example here. So in our practice, one of the things we do is we help organizations develop what we call a SharePoint roadmap. And this roadmap is the idea of how do you take advantage of SharePoint, and which business needs do we address first, address second, and address third. So we go through this process where we talk to the business group. So if you look at this spreadsheet, on the leftmost column, we have different departments. We have operations, HR, finance. And, I spend an hour, hour and a half, whatever, depending how large or how small the organization is, and just talk to them what their business pain points are. And I show examples, I talk to them, and then they'll start opening up. Hey, Dux, our SOP creation process, it's so manual. We use email, Excel, network share, and sometimes things just get lost. So as they're describing that process, in column C, I'm documenting and picking what out-of-the-box feature that I can take advantage of with SharePoint. And so, I keep talking to them. And then once our meeting's about done, before I end, I ask them, okay, HR, if there's one thing we can solve right now, what would that be? HR would say, oh, you know what? It's a metrics report. That would be great if we fix it. Then payroll process, then benefits, etc. So what you want is have them prioritize what the most pressing business need is. And our role is to map it to which SharePoint capabilities that can potentially support it. Now, once that's done, by the way, this example I'm showing you here, gang, is for an 8,000 people organization. And we work with IT and key business groups in really mapping out how SharePoint can be leveraged. And then the next piece is we want to measure the value of these features. Because one of the challenges that a lot of organizations face is SharePoint's so big. What do we deploy first? What do we deploy next? I mean, we don't want to turn on every single feature because it'll be too much for users. So what we do is we flip the view. We have the different departments, HR, operations, and then we list the features we've extracted based on their business needs. So these are all the features that HR would need based on their business needs. And then we identify the priority. And this is based on what they describe. 5 as the most important thing. List and libraries would always come up as 5 because those are essential components, a lot of solutions you would build. And then we measure what's the size and the effort to build these for HR. And we have some metric we standardization we put. So 1's 20 hours, 2's 3-person weeks, etc. So we have those metrics. And in your organization may be different depending on the skill set you guys have. So we put those measurements. And then we put the impact. Okay, if we roll this out, what's the business impact to HR? 3. 3 means it's high impact. It's very useful because it's going to cut down a lot of the manual stuff. It's going to save them time. It's going to get them the information sooner, whatever. How reusable are these lists? 3 means it's very reusable. So with these measurements, we now have a total business value of those features or those capabilities for HR. 9 means, it's high value. And how we measure that is priority plus impact plus reusability minus effort. So now we have a tangible measurement on the value of a specific feature for a specific group. So now when I ask you, why are you deploying a wiki? Well, we need a wiki for project managers because they can document their lessons learned, and this is the value, right? Why do we need all these libraries? Why do we need these discussion boards? So you can clearly tie it back now to specific business need. And that's where you want to get to. And friends, this is something we don't do. By the way, is this useful? Just raise your hand if this is something that's useful for you. I just want to see. Yeah? Okay, good. Is this something you want to get? You want a copy of this spreadsheet? Yeah? Okay. Yeah, it'll be $100 a download. No, just kidding. I'll get it to you. But that's the thing, right? I mean, we don't do this. We just install the thing, we just install SharePoint, throw it out there, and then expect a miracle would happen. No. And the other point to this, here's the most important part. You bring the business back in. Because you can bring the business back in, key decision makers, and say, okay, this is what SharePoint means to our company. So I know you told me, boss, I'm the Windows admin, you told me to deploy SharePoint by myself on top of my day job to 8,000 people in 3 months, but this is what SharePoint means. And I'm sure, as you can see, there's no freaking way I could do it by myself. So you tell me what's important, right? So now this gives visibility into the to the business folks what SharePoint means. Because it's just, hey, we want SharePoint. Really? This is what it means. And then we have to be realistic, too, of how much IT can do and cannot do. On this second section, what's the implementation impact? If we build all these lists for HR, what's the implementation impact for IT? A 1. A 1 means 20 hours. Maybe IT has to configure some security or create some accounts, whatever. What about support impact? What about training impact? It's a total impact of 3 to IT. And now this is a great conversation because even if it's a high business value, IT might say, well, Dux, it's a 3. That means you don't have the budget for this fiscal year to do this. And the business might say, no, look at this. It's very valuable for us. Then this is a good time for IT to say, well, if it's really valuable for you, as IT, we're committed to put SharePoint and infrastructure in place. But for a specific business solution, if it's really going to be valuable for you, why don't you pony up either give us some money. We could do this for you. You can hire people, or you go send some people to training so that solution can be in place. So it's a great conversation piece to have the business pony up. And that's something that we should learn to do as IT. While I know SharePoint as a technology is in our budget, but for specific business solution that's high profile, that can really solve business problems, have the business pony up. And that's the other thing. Business don't appreciate SharePoint because they're not throwing in any money to it. Once the conversation is done, the idea with this spreadsheet is now you can have a consensus as to, okay, what are we going to do? All right, based on the needs, based on what we can do and cannot do, we've decided phase 1 are all the pink, phase 2 are all the blue, phase 3 are all the green, right? So now you have a list of priorities and what the roadmap looks like. And this is very useful because now as you start rolling it out and deploying all these solutions, and somebody comes to you and say, can you make SharePoint pretty? I don't like how it looks. You can clearly say, okay, let's go back to that spreadsheet and see where making SharePoint pretty is a business need. I don't see making SharePoint pretty as a business need. Now, if it's a valid business need, we can add it onto this list, but keep in mind, something has to give, right? What are we giving up? What are we, is it schedule? Are we throwing more money? Because, a lot of us, we don't have a clear roadmap on what we're going to do. We just throw it out there, right? So this is how you do it. At least for us, we found it very effective. We've been using this spreadsheet for a while now because Microsoft doesn't have anything. So you got to assess your organizational readiness and prioritize the business needs and how SharePoint can help. The other realities you have to assess is how much can you do as IT or not, right? IT can never be Superman. You cannot do it all. While you can put the platform in place, you have to think about working with the business folks. What about change management, support and maintenance? One of the key roles you have to have is what I call a SharePoint business analyst. We have, at least in organizations I work with, you guys have enough admins and developers, but what's missing is the individual that will work with the business, identify solutions, and help map out what these solutions would look like in SharePoint. You got to have that resource. The fourth step in being able to achieve organizational buy-in is establish your roadmap. Now, I just want to make sure because I can't, I'm not there physically with you guys. How's everything so far? Fine, slow, good, bad, good stuff? Okay. So fourth step is make sure you have to have some kind of roadmap in place, right? Because unless you have a 12 to 18 month plan on what SharePoint would be, again, you're just aimlessly fidgeting your thumb and just taking whatever comes. No, if you want to be successful, this has to be intentional. And start off with that Excel spreadsheet. You can, grow from there, make a more formal plan and say, this is what we're going to do with SharePoint. And that's why having the executives engage up front is critical, because to do this right, the investment you have is more than just buying servers and licenses. You got to have the right resource to plan this out and also implement this for your organization. And if your management says we don't have the budget for that for this fiscal year, that's okay, then don't do it, right? It's better not to do it versus just throwing it out there and users having a bad experience with it. You have to look at the big picture where SharePoint is a business platform. You see, having SharePoint as your business platform, not only can you have specific solutions, you can have your intranet, but you can use it for a lot of other stuff. Things like project management, extranet, public-facing website. And the beauty of all this is, again, it integrates with existing tools people use. And it's not only Microsoft tools. You already saw earlier. I mean, imagine a user updating a expense information on a SharePoint site using Excel. I mean, do you imagine a day where you update a website with Excel? But those are powerful things, right? So I'm just going to show you a couple other examples out there. So this is my company's public-facing site. We have a single SharePoint platform. We use it for our intranet, and we use it for our public-facing site. All right. This is Ferrari.com, and I made a joke about this earlier, but it's actually true. Ferrari uses SharePoint for a lot of stuff, including their public-facing site. Hawaiian Airline. SharePoint is a business-critical platform for Hawaiian Airlines because not only are they using it internally, but they use it for a lot of their mission-critical systems, flight schedules, frequent flyer, financial transactions online. United Airlines uses Ferrari as well, uses SharePoint as well. This is the Environmental Protection Agency public dashboard. All the information is being displayed coming from SharePoint project server, and the visualization we see here is using SSRS. Here's another example. Virginia Department of Transportation. This is all powered by SharePoint, and these dashboards you see here are third-party dashboard or third-party web parts from Dundas. And why are they using it? Well, again, in the idea of having a single platform where data and information can come from various places, users can interact with it, and you can present it in a very useful fashion, and you don't have to have multiple systems to do this. Yeah? So as you build your roadmap, you have to think about long term and think about how SharePoint as a platform can help support your business and drive value. Fifth step to achieve organizational buy-in. You know, a lot of us, while, you know, even some of us, we do a great job in planning, thinking about solutions. Equally as important is the idea of sustainable adoption. You know, we think of adoption as training, but training alone is not enough. Because if you want to sustain adoption, it requires a big paradigm shift in change management exercise. You know, I love this quote, right? From Machiavelli. He says, there's nothing more difficult to take in hand, more perilous to conduct, or more uncertain in its success than to take the lead in the introduction of a new order of things. Change is the hardest part for people. That's why, you know, in a lot of organizations, SharePoint's there, and it's nothing but a file share because that's what people know. They look at this complex thing, and all they can figure out, oh, I can upload a file to the document library. That's what I'm going to use it for. But I guarantee you, a lot of people in your organizations have no clue that they can connect Excel with SharePoint. They have no clue that they can connect Outlook with SharePoint or use a Mac with SharePoint seamlessly, right? So how you do this is you have to have a sustainable adoption program. And if there's one thing you remember tonight is these two words, sustainable adoption. How do you sustain adoption through time? And the way you do this is really by taking a phase approach, where in the first phase of your adoption campaign is to drive awareness. And the way you do this is you got to have, first of all, IT alone cannot do this. You got to work with corporate communications and HR, where you have to put together a program that not only will teach people, but it should motivate and excite people as well. And by driving awareness, so the first group of people you have to drive awareness with is your executive and key business folks. Just like the examples I talked about earlier, one of the things in my organization we do early on when we work with customers is I meet with executives and key business folks just to make them realize the power of the platform for their organization, with the intent of getting them excited, but more importantly, showing them that, look, this platform can facilitate change, just like what I showed you earlier. Imagine Miss Sally not dealing with email and saving 2 hours or 3 hours, right? How many more use cases like that you have in your organization? And then the last point is provide a way that you can empower people and help them to help each other as well. In the spirit of social, you want to have some tools in place that they can be successful, but more importantly, don't just rely on IT if they need help. And that's where the social piece comes in. In 2013, they have a great new feature called communities where you can certainly do that. Once you've done your awareness phase, the next phase you have to do your buy-in. This is the part where you do your full-blown planning for training. You roll out the training, but you also roll out adoption programs, things like lunch and learns. there's an organization I'm working with now. They're 100,000 people organization. They just did an upgrade. We're rolling out a 12-month adoption program. So there's, the initial piece of the program is your training, but one of the things I highly recommend, end user training, no more than 2 hours, and make it hands-on. Site admin training or site manager training, no more than 4 hours. And then part of that is past training. There's recurring activities like lunch and learns, user groups within the organization, games or contests. So we actually make different departments compete against each other as to specific solutions that they can develop. In one company I'm working with now, we have SharePoint Idol. Sounds funny, but it works because people give prizes. Essentially, they showcase their SharePoint solution, and people vote like what the best solutions are. And then lastly, provide constant engagement. This is where your corporate communications and HR come into play because they can drive this through your newsletters, through your announcements, through your corporate activities. And typically it takes about 12 to 15 months for true adoption to sink in. And then past that, you can scale back on your sustainable adoption activities. The other part to drive sustainable adoption is you got to have champions. And your champions aren't necessarily your site managers. These are people that can get really excited and help you evangelize. So like the example I said earlier, Miss Sally was so excited about this, she figured out how to do more stuff. She was the one evangelizing on the power of the platform. One of the groups of people you might want to consider is your executive admins. These people are very influential, but more importantly, once you get them excited, they will help you evangelize and drive adoption. One of the solutions that they love is a conference room scheduling system. Essentially, it's a SharePoint site with a bunch of calendars that you assign to a conference room because that's a bane of their existence, right? Like, who's using the conference room? Can I reserve conference room? So think about these things on what can excite people, but more importantly, help them grow and mature their usage of SharePoint and help evangelize around that. So that's critical for sustainable SharePoint adoption. You see, if you want to be successful and do this, it has to be intentional. I'm sure a lot of you have seen just throwing it out there won't work. I mean, this picture I'm showing you guys, it's a picture of the Philippine Dragon Boat rowing team. This was taken back in 1994. Are you guys familiar with Dragon Boat rowing, by the way? For those not familiar, this is a big sport in Asia. It's like canoeing with 22 people on the boat, and you just pretty much compete, right? This is the Philippine Dragon Boat rowing team in the World Finals in 1994. Picture was taken by Associated Press. And why I'm showing you this, because I was part of that team. This guy cheering at the back, that's me. And I was cheering because I thought we won first place. As soon as this picture was taken, I realized we won second. We lost to China by half of a second. Now, why am I sharing this story? You see, being part of this team, as I reflect on it, made me realize it has a lot of analogy to how you become successful with SharePoint. First and foremost, did you think we woke up one day and decided, hey, next week we're going to represent our country and compete in the World Finals? Did we do that? No, of course not. It took us 6 months to train for this, and prior to that, we were already Dragon Boat rowers. It's not like they just pick anybody from the street. In 6 months, from Monday to Saturday, we were in Manila Bay. I'm originally from the Philippines. 4 a.m. to 6 a.m., just training. The first 2 months, we didn't even hit the water. Our coach had us doing cardio exercises. We were running, jumping around for the first 2 months. And I was quite frustrated because I was asking the coach, I said, why are we running and all this? We should be hitting the water and start rowing. He goes, baby steps, right? We got to get quick wins. I remember he said that. We got to build up your stamina before we do the hard part. And then after the second month, we jumped in the water and start training for the competition. And boy, I mean, we do it in rain, in good weather and bad weather. But one thing that stuck in my head, what our trainer, our coach was saying is, look, we have to keep our eye in the finish line. We got to think about the finish line. while we have the greatest boat, because at that time the boat we had was like a fiberglass, all this good, he said it's just a boat. It's just a way to get there, right? So a lot of hard work, a lot of baby steps, but we made it. So my point is, we should quit selling the boat. We keep selling SharePoint and pitching SharePoint. Forget that. The boat doesn't matter. Sell the destination. Hey, Miss Sally, would you like to cut down 2 hours of every month for this process you're doing? Hey, project managers, would you want to stop dealing with a bunch of these emails and reports and so manual stuff? Sell the destination. SharePoint is just the boat for us to get there. So, again, 5 steps to achieve organizational buy-in and transform your enterprise. Gain executive engagement, educate, engage the business, assess how ready you are and be realistic about it, establish your roadmap, typically 12 to 18 months, and then promote sustainable adoption. So with that, hopefully you guys found it helpful. What do you guys think? Useful? Any questions? Good? No questions? All right, so I actually recorded this session, gang. So what I'll do, I'll package all these stuff. I'll once I edit the recording, I'll work with Roger and make sure you guys get a copy of this recording, the PowerPoint, the templates I showed you, and also the code to download for my book. Again, thanks again for this opportunity, for having me in your inaugural session, and more power, more user group meetings to come. And guys, let's keep in touch.